This is What's Wild in New Hampshire by wildlife biologist Eric Orff. Hey, I'm up visiting longtime New Hampshire Fish and Game moose biologist Kris Rines this morning for the Women's History Month. I know it was a while ago, but I'm capturing women that I worked with over my 3-decade career at Fish and Game and beyond. Women that I have learned a lot from and that have done extraordinary work here in New Hampshire. And Kris, you were our first moose biologist. Give us, how did you end up at Fish and Game? Tell us about how you landed a job and what did you do over the year, stuff like that.
How did I? Well, I went to school at Michigan State University and I started there pre-vet because I was told, no, I wanted to do wildlife, that women weren't allowed in wildlife. But then I met some women at MSU who were actually getting wildlife degrees, so I switched my major, much to my parents' dismay. As my mother said, what could you possibly do in that? And so when I graduated, I was working for the Michigan DNR, and they, of course, went through some hard times and downsized, and people who were new immediately got the axe. And so I wanted to come home. So we came back, and I started driving down to Fish and Game and inquiring about jobs. And again, I was told, we don't hire women.
Really?
Multiple times, yes. So that was a little discouraging, but I persevered, and I had help in that my cousin David worked for Governor Sununu,
Okay.
and he put in a good word for me.
All right.
So finally they allowed me to interview, and I interviewed with Charlie Berry, Henry Mock, and Howie Nowell.
Yep.
And one of Howie's questions was...
We won't go there. Let's not pick on Howie because I know he did do some stuff that was not appropriate today.
It was an inappropriate question, and they all found it hysterically funny. And but anyway, I did manage to get the job, and
that was the animal damage control.
I was in the animal damage control. I was the rat choker. So got that job, and then they decided they needed a moose biologist because moose were being seen more frequently. There was a lot of pressure to institute a hunt.
Yep.
And so that opening became available, and Howie was actually instrumental in making sure I put in for that, and I got it.
Nice.
So
you were on a roll.
There I was. So one of the first things we needed to do was there was a lot of misconceptions about moose. Some of our representatives, at least one of them, actually thought that they ate deer fawns. And anyway, we needed to get some information on their habitat use. Was there a separate population that used roadside salt licks as opposed to a deep woods population? About how many did we think there were? So one of the first things we needed to do was get some collars on animals. And at the time, the best tranquilizer for moose was not one that our Fish and Game commissioners would approve of.
Really?
They said we couldn't use it. It was carfentanil.
Oh yeah.
And it was extremely dangerous.
Oh yeah.
For people. And so I came up with the grand idea of why don't we just use xylazine?
Right, which we've been using on deer and moose already.
Right, and I had seen a lot of use when I was a veterinary technician.
Okay, yep.
in large animal use, and I thought, well, why can't we use that in moose? So I reached out to the moose community, and they basically told me, you'll kill every animal you dart. they didn't recommend it. They didn't feel it could be done. But I did get one gentleman who wrote back and said, well, it probably can be done. It'll be interesting to see what your mortality rate is.
Okay.
So off we went.
Yep.
You were with me, and
Yep.
we went up and collared moose.
Was that 1986, wasn't it?
Yeah.
86 the first year.
Yeah, and we did it. So
But 20 collars, as I recall, right?
it took us forever. But we were darting them as they came into roadside salt licks. And so the first one we darted during the day. That did not go over well because, of course, there was these huge groups of people. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were sure we were.
They thought you were killing the moose.
Kill them. And so we switched and we said, well, we'll dart them at night.
Yep.
So that's what we did. And it was tough. And we'd send out a couple of darting crews. I very quickly relinquished the dart gun because I was not the greatest with the dart gun. And so one of the most memorable stories, of course, includes you. And so we by the way, we didn't have any higher mortality rate with Rompin than with any other drug at the time, including carfentanil. But it did take them a long time to go down.
Yeah.
So we had to dart them with radio darts, and they'd disappear into the bush at night.
Sometimes some distance. Yep.
Yep. And we would follow them and hopefully get to them before they were waking up. And then you had to be very, very quiet.
And not use a light. This was in the dark.
Not use lights, because we had learned that if you turned on a light,
off they went.
Oh, no, they would wake up and they'd be like, oh, it's the great moose god.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
They would come to
you.
Yes,
oh, they would come at you. Yes,
yeah,
right.
I had
right.
a cow come up and rest her head on me.
Yep,
and they would
I had the same thing. Oh,
like
yeah.
calves.
Yep, like a moth. Yep, like a moth to
like
lights.
A moth
oh,
with
yeah.
a flame.
Oh, yeah.
So you had to keep those lights off.
Right.
So anyway, we had darted this bull. And it was late in the season. So he didn't have any, his antlers were hardened off.
Right.
He was starting to come into the rut. We find him in this friggin' clear cut, which is a misnomer because there's nothing clear about a clear cut.
No, there's a lot of brush.
And holes and
piles of brush. Oh, yeah.
You can't easily maneuver.
Get anywhere. Yeah.
We found this bull. And his nose was in a little bit of water. So we go over and I kneel next to the moose and I inject the drug that helped them wake back up into his hind leg. And as I put my thumb on his vein and pull the needle out, he stands up. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So everybody's very quiet, and I just open my hand, and he thankfully takes a few steps away, but then he collapses again. And now his nose is in deeper water.
Yep, I remember that.
Yes. And you rushed to the moose's aid.
Yep, picked his head up.
And you picked up his head by his antlers.
Yep.
And that woke this rutting bull right up. And he gets to his feet, and all I could see was, oh, Eric's about to be killed.
Yep.
So I turn on my light, and I yelled, Eric, don't touch him. And that worked like a charm. The freaking thing turned around and just came after me like a freight train. And so I am running literally for my life through a clear cut, and I can hear that bull gaining on me
like
with
a
every
freight train.
step.
Yes,
and I thought, I am about to die. And thankfully, Ed Robinson was running right beside me, and he had the foresight to grab me and drag us both behind one of the only standing trees in the clear cut. And moose went right by.
And where'd he go then? Do you remember the rest of that story?
Yeah, so he goes up into some bush and collapses, and I'm like, oh, we've got to go help him.
Huh.
Ed's like, "You're not going near that moose again. Leave him alone."
Yeah.
So the poor thing survived that, but in the end, he was the moose that was killed by another moose in a fight.
Get out. Wow, I didn't
Several
know that.
months later,
Wow.
and those are his antlers on the
Well, on your
on the
garage.
garage.
I'll
Yeah.
take a picture. I'll be darned.
Yeah, we went in and excuse me, he
Huh.
had
Wow.
gotten beaten up
Yep.
really bad.
Wow. I'll be darned. I never heard that part of the story.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So he lived through that, was
Yep.
fine, and
Yep.
then
And we did.
we did.
Fine and fine.
Really nice.
Fine and finer.
Yep. So anyway, we did manage to get. Actually, we did
We put up
27 in all
Okay.
callers, but it took a
A lot of time. Yep.
ridiculously
Yep.
long.
Good duty, I must say. I love that duty.
It was a lot of fun, but we would
A lot of
literally
work,
be
huh?
awake for
Yeah.
like 20 hours a
Well,
day.
I would go 2 or 3 days without sleeping. Yeah, I
Right.
did. Yep. Because I was so excited I couldn't sleep anyways.
Yeah.
It was just too exciting.
Well, it wasn't too exciting for me. I actually found out you can fall asleep standing up talking
Yes,
to the
we
director of
did.
Fish
You
and Game.
did.
All of a sudden, I'm like, "Ah, what?
So, well, I guess we'll add. How about some history of New Hampshire moose management? So we talked about tagging them. So then we had a season in 1988, first season.